NFL Week 3 is here. What's going on, BLV? It's Mitch here, back with another week of NFL picks. In this video, this live stream, because on the Bottom Line View, we pick our games alive every Wednesday. Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe. In this video, every pick for every game versus the spread and straight up. Last week, how did we do? Let's take a look. So, last week we went 10-6 on our straight up picks, which was identical to week number 1. So far, we're looking like a wild card team back in the day. Before, long time ago, before all these youngins watched the football, there was a 16-game NFL season. You know what I mean? So we're going 10-6. We're a wild card team right now. We're not quite at that division winner status, not quite that bye week status, but 10-6 straight up in week 1, week 2. Last week versus the spread, we were pretty good. We were above 500. We did have 2 pushes though, so I believe our record was 8-6-2 last week versus the spread. Our overall spread record is 18-12-2. And our over-under record, which I'll release the over-unders tomorrow, not so hot. We did not do well on the over-unders, but that's for a different video. That is not today. That's a different video entirely. This is the NFL Pick Show, straight up and versus the spread. Let me know how you did last week, straight up and versus the spread. And if you haven't already, check out my best bets for week number 3. We've been real hot on the best bets. We want to get better across the board for our picks. So let's do that starting on Thursday night. Also, let me know, guys, how you're doing, how you're feeling. I'm really amped up right now. I'm excited, man. ELB, congratulations for becoming a BLV member, by the way. Okay, let's begin. Week number 3 with Thursday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers are at home taking on the New York G-Men. The Giants, without some big-time players. They're without 2 offensive linemen. Andrew Thomas has been ruled out at left tackle, which is a significant loss. Significant. He's one of the best left tackles in football, and by far, the best offensive lineman for the New York Giants. They also are without one of their guards in this game, and they're without their star, their feature back, Saquon Barkley. Matt Breida will get a lot more work in this game. The 49ers could be without Brandon Ayuk. He is a game time decision. Regardless, I think the 49ers win this game on defense. They're at home for their home opener, although some people think that game last week in LA was basically a home game. It's still not the same. I'm actually headed to that stadium in a couple weeks to watch the 49ers and the Cowboys, which is going to be a huge, awesome game, and I can't wait. Might be the best, most anticipated game of this season for me, and I'm going, so I'm excited. But the 49ers are at home opener. I think their defense, their pass rush wins this game. I think they dominate, especially without Andrew Thomas. I think it's just too much. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball all that well. I think they'll be in some third and uncomfortable situations. We already know the Giants aren't great in those situations against normal average defenses. And if you get caught behind this team, not like the Cardinals will let you come back. This team does not let you come back. The 49ers will take advantage of their possessions. They'll move the football. What I've seen from the Giants defense is a unit that struggling to consistently stop the run, struggling to defend the pass. They really don't have anything going on right now where it's a bread and butter for this football team on offense or defense. I think the best thing we've seen from the Giants is their aerial attack, their vertical attack this year, with Jalen Hyatt last week. But overall, I mean, you're not going to be able to throw the ball down the field against a Niners pass rush that's going to get there in a blink of an eye in this one. So just like that Cowboys game, complete mismatch at the line of scrimmage for this football game. I'm going with San Francisco to win, San Francisco to cover in their home opener on Thursday Night Football. And that Andrew Thomas injury just secured my thought on this game absolutely. So let me know your picks for Thursday night. Moving to the Sunday games, we've got the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk, spike the damn like button, please. All right. The Falcons and the Detroit Lions. This is one that I'm a little uncertain about, but my first inclination is to go with the Lions to win the game. The reason for that is they're at home, and this is back-to-back home games. They just played Seattle. It was a great game. It was back and forth. Seattle was able to upset them. I don't think Detroit drops 2 home games in a row. Desmond Ridder is away from home in this game. It's really one of the first times he's played from away from home. And he hasn't played away yet this season. He hasn't gone on the road yet this season. And Desmond Ridder has had like a record in his career at Cincinnati, high school, in professional football. I don't think he's lost a home game. But on the road, it's a little bit of a different story. So I think the Detroit Lions get back on track. I am concerned about their injuries. Obviously, if Amon-Ra St. Brown is not able to go, that does change things. I think Taylor Decker at left tackle will be back in this game. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be out for the season, I believe, at safety, which is a huge loss. They do have pretty good depth at the safety position, if that, helps. And then the pass rush, Houston is definitely, him being out as well is going to hurt. But it's really been a one-man pass rush this year with Aiden Hutchinson. I just feel like this game comes down to Detroit Lions' ability to be the most well-rounded offense that Atlanta has seen. They saw the worst offense in football in week 1. In week 2, they saw a Packers offense at home that didn't have their number 1 receiver, didn't have their best offensive lineman, didn't have their best weapon in Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari. So Detroit at home with their offensive line intact, with Jahmyr Gibbs getting, I think, a lot of work in this game. They'll be able to run it all right. And I think they can protect Jared Goff in this game, who's playing really well. Jared Goff is also by far the most proven, professional, and mature quarterback that this Atlanta defense has seen. I think he takes advantage of some of the matchups in this game. I think they're able to do what they usually do. Run the ball, utilize play action, a lot of crossers, a lot of middle of the field stuff. Jared Goff is able to move the ball through the air better than any opponent we've seen for Atlanta. Again, they've been at home. They've been comfortable. Now they've got to go on the road. It's still a dome, but it's different. And then on the other side, I think the Falcons have a really good rushing attack, but Detroit has been pretty good against the run this year overall. You look at what they were able to do to stop Kenneth Walker. You look at what they were able to do against the Chiefs. I'm not saying that those teams are the equivalent of Atlanta's rushing attack. I think Atlanta will have more success here, but I will say I think that Detroit is actually pretty good against the run. They're not horrible, and I think they can hold up, especially on the inside. And I think that's going to force Ridder, again, on the road, one of the first times in his career, against this defense, this noise. I think there's just going to be more Jared Goff coming through in those situations than Desmond Ridder. And I don't trust Atlanta's passing attack in those moments. So I'm going to take Detroit to win. And I'm going to lean towards Detroit to cover as well. I think they win by 4 points, 4 to 6 points here. So I'm leaning towards Detroit to win and Detroit to cover. I would not bet the spread, though. I think it could go either way. I could easily see this game being like 30 to 27, 27-24, where Atlanta is able to cover a half point. If it were 3, I would take Detroit for sure on a bet, but not at 3.5. 3.5 can be very tricky. But I do expect Detroit to win by 4 to 6, more likely. So I lean towards that way. I'll guess something like 30 to 23 for the Detroit Lions at home. I can't see them going 1-2. I think it's more likely that both these teams are 2-1 after this game. All right, that's a very interesting game, so I spent a little bit more time on that one. Buffalo Bills and the Washington Commanders are up next. This, to me, is a low-key, really good game, I think. Washington has played good football through the first 2 games, first 2 weeks of this NFL season. But the question is, can they compete with a team on Buffalo's level, right? Washington is 2-0, but they've beaten the Arizona Cardinals, barely, by the way, and they beat a Denver Broncos team that, yeah, Vegas still thinks is pretty good. I don't agree. But I have Denver as a bottom 5 team in the NFL. I have Arizona as a bottom 5 team in the NFL. Washington is 2-0, but I don't see them as, right now at least, a Buffalo Bills level of team. That being said, this game is in Washington, and Washington has the components to be able to make this game competitive with Buffalo. They have a good front 4, and whenever you have a good front 4 against the Bills, I believe you have a shot to slow down their offense because the Bills' offensive line is by far their biggest weakness in pass protection. The reason I liked the Bills so much last week was because the Bills were at home. The Bills were playing a pass rush and a defense that is not really made to stop the Bills. They have one good pass rusher in Max Crosby. This Washington team, you can't really cheat and double one guy, right? You've got Daron Payne, you've got Jonathan Allen, you've got Montez Sweat, you've got now Chase Young that you've got to deal with, you've got to worry about. And Denver's offensive line, I think, is a lot better than Buffalo's. So I think Denver was able to protect. Denver was able to mostly get rid of the ball. And Russ was able to make vertical plays, which is what scares me about the Washington defense. They allowed too many shots down the field, especially in that first half. And Buffalo is a team that loves to get the ball down the field vertically to Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs. And Josh Allen can run around and make those throws and make those plays. That is concerning. That is kind of what takes it off the board for me. Early in the week, I was thinking, you know what? Washington can be a live dog here, actually make this thing interesting, especially in Washington. It could be a bit of a fall asleep trap game for the Bills. But at the end of the day, 6.5 is a really tricky number for me to place a bet on either side because typically when the Bills win, they do blow out the other team. They typically do. As we've seen, they did that to the Raiders. And I just don't know. The Bills' defense, to me, is the best defense Washington has seen this season, that Sam Howell has seen. They're very fundamentally sound. They tackle well. They cover well. They don't give you a lot of big plays. They make you be very patient. And then their front 4 is pretty solid. It's not great. It's not phenomenal. It's not overwhelming. But I think it's better than people think it is. Ed Oliver had a great game last week, in my opinion, and they still got some guys playing at a very high level in the back end. Matt Milano might be the best linebacker in the league right now, so I'm leaning towards the Bills to win. I want to take Washington to cover. It's really tough, man. I think Washington to cover, but I don't know. I'm going to say Washington to cover. I'm hoping for a good game here in Washington. But I'm going to go Bills to win, Washington plus 6.5. Maybe the Bills just pull it out in the end. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I think Washington's defense can be competitive enough for this to be close, and Sam Howell has proven that he can make some plays. So I'll go Bills to win, Washington to cover. Next, we've got the Denver Broncos at the Miami Dolphins. Miami is favored by 6.5 in this game. I made this a best bet. I've got the Miami Dolphins to win and to cover. There's no secret here if you've seen that video. I just don't think Denver is anywhere near as good as this number suggests. I've seen nothing from Denver to prove to me that they're within a touchdown of a team at the status right now of the Miami Dolphins. Now, maybe the Dolphins are a bit overrated, but what has really impressed me about Miami was last week, Mike McDaniel completely went away from his identity. His identity has been vertical passing game. And they were able to run the ball. They were able to stay patient against a Patriot defense that is light years better than the Denver Broncos. You're talking about a matchup where Denver just allowed 30-plus points to the Washington offense. And now they're playing arguably a top 3 offense in the NFL right now on the road. Denver was at home the first 2 games against Washington. against Las Vegas, and they lost both games against teams that I would rank in the bottom 12 of the NFL. Now they play a top 10, top 5 team in the NFL in their building in the heat of Miami. I think Miami can get enough pressure on Russ, and I feel like their defense at home is definitely going to just feed on that energy of that Hard Rock Stadium. And then you have Vic Fangio having a bit of a revenge game here. Remember, he was the Denver Bronco head coach at one point in time. He knows a lot of that personnel, and he can also help McDaniel with the game plan from the offensive standpoint, because it's a very similar defense that he's facing. Now, I would also say I just don't see how Denver is going to be able to create consistent pressure. That's been a big problem for them. They faced one of the worst offensive lines last week. They weren't able to get pressure against a Washington offensive line consistently enough when they needed to. And really, they only have one good corner. So yeah, I'm a little worried a little bit about Jalen Waddle, but I just have been impressed with Tua's ability to get the ball out, his ability to read the defenses, and then McDaniel's ability to find that magic where he's getting all these different playmakers involved, both the running backs, multiple receivers, the tight ends, right? And then their protection has been really, really good against a phenomenal defensive line in New England and a decent one in the Chargers. So I like Miami here. I think Miami wins. I think Miami covers. It might not be pretty for a portion of this game, but I think at the end of the day, Miami wins by at least 7 to 10 points. So I'm going to take the Dolphins in this game at home. Next up, Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville is favored by 10 in this game. And this spread doesn't really make a lot of sense to me overall. If you've watched Jacksonville, they were very shaky against the Colts in week number 1 despite covering. And then in week 2, their offense was not good against the Chiefs. And that game was at home. This game, Houston actually, I think, beat Jacksonville last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Houston beat them. So maybe I've been fooled by the Texans, who have not played well, and I don't think they've covered in either game yet. But I've been impressed by CJ Stroud. And I think Jacksonville just hasn't played well enough for me to be convinced that I will not take this number. So I'm going to take, I think it's rather at 10 or 9.5 or 9. I don't know. It depends where you're shopping the number. But I'll take Jacksonville to win, but I'll take the Texans with the points. I just think that's too many points. That being said, Jacksonville has a chance to get back on track on offense. Travis Etienne should find success on the ground, which should open things up through the air. Calvin Ridley has to have a much better game than he did last week, and I think he will. Defensively, Jacksonville impressed against the Chiefs, but I kind of felt like it was more about the Chiefs than it was about the Jags. I just felt like the Chiefs were sloppy. The Chiefs were not playing their game. Jacksonville kind of got lucky in that regard, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm going to take the Texans to cover the spread in a divisional game, but I'll take Jacksonville to win. Next up, you've got the Indianapolis Colts at the Baltimore Ravens. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you do. Spike the like button. Indianapolis Colts, Baltimore Ravens. Ravens favored by 8 in this game. I like the Colts to cover this game, and this might actually be a game that I end up betting at some point, but I think the Ravens will win. I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts win this game. I wouldn't. But Gardner Minshew is the quarterback for the Colts in this game. Anthony Richardson is probably going to be out due to a concussion. The Ravens have a lot of injuries, and they were able to survive without those players against the Bengals. But I think the Bengals are not the Bengals right now. Like, Joe Burrow is not playing that well. Their defense isn't up to speed. Their receiving core, the offense is very vanilla. The Colts bring something different to the table offensively. I think they've been very creative. Shane Steichen's had very good game plans in both games so far. And I think they'll surprise some people with how they're able to move the ball in this game, especially through the air. Defensively, we've seen Gus Bradley take on Lamar Jackson in the past, and we've had really good, really close games between the Colts and the Ravens over the past couple of years. We've also seen Gus Bradley do a pretty good job against Lamar Jackson in the past, and I also feel like the Ravens struggled against the Texans in week 1 a little bit. Now, maybe that was all rust, but I think some of that was due to the fact that the Texans play a very similar scheme to Gus Bradley. And I think there is some carryover there because of that. So I like the Colts to cover this number. I think they're playing better than people thought they would, better than I thought they would. And I think their coaching has been a lot better than I thought it would be. I will also say that I think the Ravens' injuries will catch them at some point, and I think it could be this game. But that being said, the way Lamar is playing, I think he bails this team out in the end. So I feel like Baltimore will win the game through Lamar's magic in the fourth quarter, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts really hung around in this game. Could be completely wrong, but the Ravens scare me with all the injuries on the offensive line and in the secondary. So that's my take for this game. Ravens win, Colts cover. The next game is the who the F knows what's going to happen game of the week. You've got the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are at home for this game. Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, promising for a lot of points, promising for a lot of yards, and an aerial attack on both sides. The Los Angeles Chargers currently have the worst defense in the NFL, but it can't be that much worse than the Minnesota Vikings. Austin Eckler, I don't think is going to play this week, but I do think the Vikings will struggle covering Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and all of the options for this passing game. The Vikings need to try and get a run game going here with Alexander Mattison. It's very much been lacking. That being said, they played Tampa Bay, a really good front and a really good run D, and Philadelphia, a really good front. So can they get a little bit more balance in that game? Hawkinson's been phenomenal. Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison's been great. The Vikings are very explosive, and so far I would say they've been the best passing offense in the NFL. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think they really have been. So this is going to be a fun game. Really fun game. I like Kevin O'Connell more than I like Brandon Staley. I like Herbert more than I like Cousins. I like the talent of the Chargers defense more than I like the Vikings defense, but I also like Brian Flores. So this is a really, really, really tough game to pick, and I would advise against betting this game, period. I do have the Chargers ranked higher than the Vikings, but this game is also in Minnesota. So you can understand my confliction with this game, I guess you could call it. I will say, as you guys can tell, I have no idea. I am going to go with the Chargers. And the only reason is the Vikings offensive line is injured. And that scares me a little bit against Joey Bosa. I also feel like the Chargers have been the more impressive team through 2 weeks. It's been close, but I think the Chargers are more talented. So, the Vikings at home, the Vikings got better coaching, but I'm going to go with Herbert here. I'm going to go with the healthy offensive line, the Chargers. So, I'll take the Chargers to win on the road. Don't have any faith in that pick. Next, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Cleveland Brownies. The Tennessee Titans, Mike Vrabel, Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland Browns. It should have been Nick Chubb versus Derrick Henry, but it is not. It is Derrick Henry versus Jerome Ford. That sucks. But we got Ryan Tannehill, who bounced back last week, and we had Deshaun Watson, who was absolutely putrid versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game is another tough game. I think the spread I recently saw was 3.5. At 3.5, I like the Titans, but At 3, I would probably not bet it. I think this game is a field goal game either way. I think it will end up a low-scoring affair. And the reason for that, Cleveland has been phenomenal defensively. Through the first 2 weeks, they have not allowed either team, the Bengals or the Steelers, to enter the red zone. Neither team has gone past the 30-yard line, which is insane. The Browns have had arguably the probably second best defense in the NFL through 2 games. I'd probably say Dallas is first. And on the other side, Tennessee has the best run defense in the NFL. And whenever you can play Cleveland and stop the run, it forces their quarterback to be involved in the game, which we've seen Deshaun Watson has been really inaccurate, really flawed mechanically, really dumb, taking a lot of sacks, and he fumbles the ball a lot. So, you have to deal with that. Cleveland, it's interesting. They lost to the Steelers because of 2 defensive touchdowns. They probably should have beat the Steelers. Overall, they were the better team, but Deshaun kind of lost them that game. Will that happen again? I could see it happening again. If Tennessee is able to get pressure in this game, which I think they can, I think Vrabel is going to make Watson very uncomfortable. I feel Tannehill will do a better job protecting the ball. I think Derrick Henry will have more success running the ball in this game than Cleveland will. I will say I like the Browns receivers more, and I like the Browns corners more, but Mari Cooper's beat up, and I like Vrabel more than I like the Browns coaching. This feels like a matchup type of game for me. It could go either way, but this is a good matchup for the Titans given the current state of Cleveland. The thing that scares me away from betting the Titans is the pass rush of Cleveland versus Tennessee's offensive line. But I felt like they did a better job at protecting Tannehill in week 2, and he actually played a lot better. So I'm going to take the upset. I'm going to take the Titans to win. I'm just really upset with Cleveland right now, and maybe I'm a little emotional about that, but Deshaun Watson looks really bad, and to me is a liability to lose any game to any opponent. So I'm going to go with the Titans to win, and obviously the Titans to cover that game. All right, guys. So before we get to the New England Patriots and the New York Jets, make sure you Gronk spike the like button and subscribe for weekly NFL picks live every single Wednesday. Let's give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. We got Big Al Williams in the chat. We've got Singh in the chat. We've got Stephanie in the chat. What's up, Stephanie? How you doing? We've got Isaac, Toby Maguire himself. We have Jake Hedge in the chat. We've got Jay in the chat. We've got Jordan Hunter, the guitar-loving teen. We've got Jimmy, who with his classic, "Hi, bro, how are you doing?" I'm doing great, Jimmy. Thank you for asking. We've also got Ashton Luck in the chat. We've got Timothy in the chat. We've got Hatter's House in the chat. Thank you guys for tuning in to the BLV Live. Before we get to this next game, I have a couple things to say about Underdog Fantasy. So, guys, you know I love Underdog Fantasy. It's my favorite fantasy platform. And during the year, my favorite thing to do on Underdog Fantasy is play their pick'ems. This is my pick'em for the week. You could sign up to Underdog Fantasy right now and double your first deposit up to $100. $100 for free. You put $100 in, you get $100 for free to utilize on some pick'ems. And this is my pick'em for this week. We've got Christian McCaffrey going higher on his rushing total on Thursday Night Football. I have not been convinced by the Giants' ability to stop the run. I do think the Niners will take care of business on the defensive end, leading to a lot of rushing attempts for Mr. CMC. He's rushed for over 100 yards in both of the first 2 games, and I think he will once again in week number 3. I like that one. You get Daniel Jones for free to go over half a yard. If this was maybe 2 yards, I'd probably take the under. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm going higher on Daniel Jones to go over half a yard. The third pick is Nick Bosa to get a sack. So he's just got to get over half a sack. I think he will get a sack. No Andrew Thomas on the offensive line for the Giants. Big tackle mismatch. I've got my guy, Mac Diddley Jones, to go over 217.5 passing yards. Last year against the Jets in New York, he threw for over 300 yards, believe it or not. I think that Mac and the game plan for the Patriots will be slowly but surely throwing the ball underneath and leaning on that short passing game against a very simplistic Jets defense. They will have to get rid of the ball quick because of the pass rush of the Jets. Trent Brown will be back. I think Mac, that will be the way for the Patriots to throw the ball. A lot of attempts for a low yards per completion, but I think they'll get to about at least 220 yards in that game. And then Calvin Ridley, my final pick for the pick'em, is over, higher, 71.5 receiving yards for Sir Calvin Ridley. Had 100 yards in week 1, faced a very good Chiefs defense. I think an underrated Chiefs defense in week number 2. And L'Jarius Sneed, one of my favorite corners in the game, he was held in check, but he did have 8 targets in that game. I think he will go higher than 71.5, and I think he'll get back to 100 yards in week number 3. So those are my picks for Underdog Pick'em, guys. You can sign up right now using the code BLV. Double your first deposit up to $100. Link is in the description. Check out Underdog Fantasy. Link in the description, guys. Let's get back to the picks. Shout out to Kaylee, who is back in the chat. We love to see Kaylee. And shout out to Stephanie, who says, love this, Mitch. We love seeing new people in the chat. All right, next game is the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. So the Patriots are favored by 2.5. If you guys checked out my best bets, you know that I have the New England Patriots covering 2.5, which is the first time all year I've included my favorite team, the Patriots, in my best bets. I feel confident about this one. Why, you ask? Because the New England Patriots have beaten the Jets 14 times in a row. I am not making that up. I am not making that number up. 14 times in a row. 2015, I was 18 years old. The last time they lost. 2015, bro. 2.5 points. I'm taking the Patriots to win. I love their defense in this matchup. Jonathan Jones expected to be back. He was back at practice. Trent Brown expected to be back at left tackle. A massive, literally, addition to the Patriots. Trent Brown, there's such a difference when he's in there for the offensive line, especially against a team like the Jets, who do have a very good pass rush. They got to keep Mac Jones protected. Now the Patriots will have perhaps their starting offensive line for the first time all season long. That will be a big difference maker. And then defensively speaking, they'll have at least their 2 top corners in the lineup. Marcus Jones might be out, but Jonathan Jones will be in. I think that helps cover Garrett Wilson if Christian Gonzalez is not up to the task. Belichick is undefeated against Mr. Zach Wilson, who's thrown a ton of picks against the Patriots. Last year, they swept the Jets. The first game, I thought New England's offense played pretty well. Like I said, Mac Jones actually had 300 yards in that game. In the second game, it was a very windy game in New England. Mac had a very high completion percentage, but they were not able to really get a lot going because of the weather. I think New England's offense actually plays better than people think in this game through the air, because you watch that Dallas team and what they were able to do. They kept the Jets at bay from a pass rushing standpoint, and they made sure that it was not 3rd and long, it was 3rd and short. And I think New England will play that conservative, and I feel like they'll mix in the run, but they'll play short passing game, and they'll move the ball methodically down the field. And I feel like Zach Wilson is just a liability to make mistakes against a creative, good defense under Belichick. So I think New England wins this game. I think New England covers. I'm going to say they win 20-13 over the New York Jets. Next game, you've got the Chicago Bears at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are at home for this game. They're favored by a huge number of 12.5. I think this game will be interesting just from the standpoint of the Chiefs offense has played like ass, okay, through the first 2 games. And there's no other way to put it. They sucked against the Lions. And in week 2, they were not much better. Right? Really, the reason they won that game is because of their defense. Now, they did pick it up a bit in the fourth quarter, But man, that is what makes 12.5 a little bit tricky because the Chiefs have not been scoring points. But if there is a defense you want to play in the NFL, it's the Bears defense. And maybe the Chargers, but the Bears defense stinks. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't rush the passer. And I think the biggest factor in that is they can't rush the passer, right? And because they can't rush the passer, Patrick Mahomes, no matter how bad his receivers are going to have all day to maneuver through the zone coverage, find the holes in the zone. Mahomes is going to scramble around and make his magic and dish the ball down the field through extending plays, I think, very often. Travis Kelce's back in the lineup. He's had a game under him. He's been hanging out with Taylor Swift. He's in good vibes right now. I think Travis Kelce finds the end zone not once, but twice. I think the Chiefs win this game. And if you think I'm coming on to the bottom line view and taking Justin Fields in any way, shape, or form after throwing his coaching staff so far under the bus that they were ran over not once, but twice, then you're mistaken. I'm taking the Chiefs to win. I think they put up 30 in this game. First time the offense looks competent this year. And I just don't think the Bears do much against the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs defense has been playing very, very well. The Bears have struggled to pass the ball all year, and I like the matchups for the Chiefs secondary. Chris Jones is going to wreck this offensive line. I think the Chiefs win, the Chiefs cover. Next, we've got the Dallas Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals, another massive spread this week and another favorite that I actually like. I like Dallas. I think Dallas is the best team in the NFL right now. At least that's the way they're playing. I think their defense is the best defense in the NFL. And although I have underestimated the ability of the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think the Cardinals have played a team on this level. They've played two teams that are subpar, and the Cardinals are actually somewhat within fighting distance of them from a talent standpoint. This is like, I'm not sure a single Cardinal player would start on the Dallas Cowboys. Like, I legitimately am unsure whether or not the Arizona Cardinals would have a single starter outside of like Marquise Brown is like wide receiver 3 and maybe like one of their linemen, and Budda Baker's injured, so you can't include him. Like, I do not know. Maybe Zayvon Collins, like at linebacker. I don't know if a Cardinals player would start at the Cowboys positions across the board. Not quarterback, not cornerback, not tight end, not center, not defensive tackle. Like, I have no clue which position the Cardinals would start. So this is just such a talent difference. I think Dallas moves the ball at will early in the game. In the second half, their defense just dominates. And Josh Dobbs is in a world of trouble here. And the stuff they've been doing to create offense, horizontal offense, a lot of RPO, a lot of option stuff. Dallas's defense is too fast and ferocious for that to work. So I like the Cowboys to win, the Cowboys to cover, and just continue their dominance this season. Next, we've got the Carolina Panthers at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle is now favored by 6. It was 5.5, which I made a best bet Seattle minus 5.5. So it's moved in my favor towards the 6. And that makes it a little trickier because 6 is a key number. 5.5 is kind of a dead number. It doesn't really matter. The difference between 5, 5.5, the NFL games rarely land on those numbers. 6 is a lot different. Now, this is what scares me about this game, actually, is Bryce Young is injured. So, what actually scares me about this game is Andy Dalton playing. That's what actually scares me about this game, because believe it or not, Andy Dalton was really good last year for the New Orleans Saints. So I actually think Andy Dalton is a better quarterback than Bryce Young. But what I will say is the receiving core and the offense of Carolina it's so bad. Like, it's so bad. They're not doing anything creative offensively. Their running game is not anything special. Seattle's run defense has been pretty solid. They took on Detroit. They did a fairly good job against a good rushing attack in Detroit. And in week 1, they weren't overwhelmed by the Rams rushing attack. It was really Stafford who diced them up, right? So their scheme hasn't impressed me. The quarterback play hasn't impressed me. Yeah, I would probably say Andy Dalton's better than Bryce Young, especially in an environment like Seattle where it's going to be loud and it's going to be unusual for a young player to go in that environment in terms of like in the NFL facing the speed of that defense in that, that climate. Yeah, he's played in big games. I was at a game where Bryce Young it was louder than it could ever be in any stadium. I was in Texas last year. That was a crazy game. He's been in environments, like he's been in national championship games, but he has not been in an NFL game in Seattle against a fast, young, ferocious defense. And Seattle does not have the greatest defense in the world from a pass defense standpoint, but I don't think they're really going to be exposed here. I just don't see how Carolina's lighting up the scoreboard on anybody. On the other side, Shaq Thompson's injured. J.C. Horn is injured. 2 significant losses for Carolina's defense. I think Seattle really got back on track last week on offense. Geno will be balling, and I think they need to bring a win to their home stadium. They lost their home opener. So I think that the Seahawks win this game. I think the Seahawks cover regardless of quarterback. The 6 makes it trickier, but Andy Dalton actually is the one that scares me more than Bryce Young, personally. All right, next, we've got the New Orleans Saints and the Green Bay Packers in one of the games of the week, in my opinion. I think this game will say a lot about these two teams. The New Orleans Saints, if they manage to go into Green Bay, a tough environment in the home opener for the Packers, and they're able to win, I think that says a lot about how good the Saints are, and I think that would pretty much put them on their way to a playoff team. And then if the Packers are able to win this game, I think it says that, hey, it's time. The Packers are going to be a good team. The Packers are going to make the playoffs. 2-1 start. They've managed to beat a Saints defense that is pretty good. So I think either way, like, this says a lot about these two teams. And I like the Packers. I have the Packers as a best bet, -2. Christian Watson, my boy, my guy, is going to be back in the lineup, I believe, this week. The BLV propaganda is not the same without Christian Watson, so he must play or else. And the offensive line, I think, is going to get a big piece back. David Bakhtiari, I believe, will be playing in this game. I think a large reason he didn't play last week is because he doesn't like to play on turf. I really actually think that is a big deal for him, like one of these soccer players out there. But Jordan Love has been impressive to me, and I think this is the best offense that the Saints have seen so far. They played Carolina last week. I just said the worst offense in the NFL. And they played Tennessee in week 1, an offense that had a new offensive line on the road, all that stuff. Derek Carr is not very good in terms of his ability outside, outdoors, on the road. And I think he's struggling in the red zone. Like, they're struggling to make 7s and not 3s. And I don't think the Saints have the run game to expose the weakness of the Packers defense. The Packers are good against the pass. The Packers are not good against the run. So I like this matchup for Green Bay at home in Jordan Love's home opener as a starter. I'll take Green Bay to win, Green Bay to cover. Next, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Las Vegas Raiders. And Stephanie asks, is it a survivor pick? Which one? Which one are you asking? Steelers at Raiders. Raiders -2.5. This is Sunday Night Football. I actually think this is a low-key, like, absolute phenomenal matchup on Sunday Night Football. This is an old-school 70s matchup. This is the Steel Curtain versus Just Win, baby. And it's in Las Vegas. Vegas is absolutely lit in prime time. Like, absolutely best environment to watch, in my opinion, in the NFL on prime time in these games. I think that is the reason I'm picking the Raiders, honestly. Like, the Raiders are good in prime time at home. I'm just saying. The drinks get flowing. You know, people come in for these games. And the Steelers' offense is horrible. Like, horrible. The Raiders' defense is not very good either. but they're not playing the Bills. All right, they're not playing the Bills in Buffalo. I've got the Raiders. I think the Raiders get revenge for last year losing that game that essentially knocked them out of the playoffs and basically knocked Derek Carr out of Las Vegas and into New Orleans. I think the Raiders win. I like the Raiders' offensive line. I think that their offensive line is a lot better than what the Steelers have played against so far in terms of the tackle position. I think that Illuminor and Miller are a really good combination, and neither of them are true weaknesses for the Raiders in the pass protection department. And I feel like the Steelers can't really go after that matchup as much as they have with McKivitz or with DeJuan Jones, or even Willis. Like, I think the Browns have weak tackles, and the Niners have one weak tackle that they could really attack and get pressure. I think the Raiders will protect well from the edges, and I also think the Raiders will get their run game on track in this game. The Steelers have not been great against the run so far this season. On the other side, I just don't see the Steelers on the road getting their offense going. None of their receivers can really separate, so I'm not too worried about the Raiders from a cornerback standpoint. And Max Crosby is going to be a terror for this team to block. So I think that the Raiders have the better offense. I think the Raiders have more balance offensively. I think they control the game, and I think they win a close one. I'll take the Raiders to win, the Raiders to cover 24-20, something like that, in this game. It will be close. It will be a good game. The Steelers can win this game if their offense gets on track. I just don't know if it's going to with Matt Canada, man. I think they got to fire Matt Canada before anything substantial happens. So I'm going to take the Raiders. I'll be cheering for the Raiders for sure, so I'm a little biased, but I'll take the Raiders in this game. I like this spot for them at home on Sunday Night Football with that home crowd for the first time this season. Moving to Monday Night Football, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles are favored by 5 points in this game. I like the Eagles to win, but I like the Bucs to cover. I think the Bucs match up well with the Eagles, but I don't have enough faith in the Bucs offense to outright say they're going to win. And that's kind of my issue. Like, I like the Bucs, how they match up with the Eagles from a defense to an offense standpoint. Like, Todd Bowles has done a good job against Jalen Hurts in the past. We've seen that before. And the Bucs just have the formula that causes the Eagles fits. They're really good against the run, and they've got a lot of big people, and they're fast at the linebacker position, so they're able to track down the outside zone and read option plays, and they're really good at blitzing. So the Bucs are going to play aggressive man-to-man coverage on the outside. They're going to blitz, and they're going to cause Jalen Hurts to be uncomfortable, who's still dealing with a shoulder injury. On the other side of things, the Eagles are very beat up in the secondary. They might be without James Bradbury. Avonte Maddox got hurt. Their safety position is beat up. I think that the Bucs will move the ball in certain moments, but I think Baker, he's playing well. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, I think have good matchups in this game. Mike Evans also owns Darius Slay, so that helps. But I don't see them getting much of a run game going here. The Eagles have been good against the run so far this year, and the Bucs are not a good running team. I think that forces Baker into a lot of tough situations, and I think some of them they'll convert, some of them they'll get in trouble, and I think Baker is more viable to turn the ball over, which I think will ultimately result in the Eagles winning the game, but I think the Bucs keeping it close. I actually think this will be more of a defensive game. I'm going to say 23-20 for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I will take the points with the Bucs. And then the final Monday night game is the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals currently favored by 2.5. No idea if Joe Burrow is playing. So that completely makes this a pick that I have no idea. I will say this when breaking down the game. Los Angeles Rams offensively have played very, very well. They played one of the best defenses in football last week, and I thought they actually moved the ball pretty darn well. Matthew Stafford is playing amazing right now, and I would argue that if Stafford can get the Rams to the playoffs this year, he would get my vote for MVP. This is a very shaky year so far in terms of MVPs. If Stafford can get this team, this roster, to the playoffs, I will give Matthew Stafford my MVP vote. That really doesn't matter because I don't have an official MVP vote. But the bottom line view will give Matthew Stafford the MVP. And that's the trajectory he is on, So I think the O-line's playing well for the Rams. I think the run game is not great, but Puka's playing great. I think that Tutu's playing great. And I think that we have kind of a coaching mismatch from the standpoint of Sean McVay knows Zach Taylor. Like, Zach Taylor is a little brother to Sean McVay. Like, Sean McVay allowed Zach Taylor to go and coach the Bengals. Like, this is a guy from his coaching tree. And at the same time, I think that the Rams defense is one that kind of plays the style of defense that gives the Bengals issues. They play very conservative. They play too deep. They just rush the quarterback. And I think Aaron Donald could be a problem for Ted Karras and that interior that has struggled this year. So I could see this game going either way. I think the Rams are definitely a viable team to pick, even with Joe Burrow. But at the same time, for Burrow and the Bengals positively, I liked what I saw in the second half. I felt like, especially in that fourth quarter, the Bengals offense started to get it going, started to click. T. Higgins played really well. They started to move the ball on the Ravens. And if Burrow doesn't throw a pick in the end zone at some point during that game, they might have even won that game, to be honest with you. So I think if Burrow plays, I lean towards the Bengals to get on track. I just don't see them going 0-3. But if he doesn't play, I'm definitely going with the Rams. So that's my pick for now. Either way, I'll just do spread and the pick. I'm not betting this. I'm staying away from it. There's too much in terms of question marks here. But I'm going to go Bengals because if they don't win this game, they're pretty much effed. And if Burrow doesn't play, I'll take the Rams because Stafford's playing unbelievable. So I've got Bengals if Burrow's in. If Burrow's out, Rams. That's my picks for both the spread and the straight up pick. Those are your picks for week number 3 of the 2023 NFL season. If you enjoyed this video, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you guys are looking for where are my bets, where can I get my bets, the place to go is Patreon. The link is in the description. Or you can just search up Patreon BLV and it will pop up. That is the place to go. Link in the description. Starts at $3. If you want all of my bets every week, subscribe there. You can ask me any questions about any bets or any picks that you might be thinking. And you can support me and the channel and my journey as a creator. So if you want to do that, check out Patreon, guys. Let's say hello to some people. Laura's in the chat. What's up, Laura? Nice to see you. We've got Marcus in the chat. Says, what's up, Mitchy Mitch? Love you, man. Hey, what's up, Marcus? Thank you for tuning in, brother. Laura says, hey, Mitch. Laura tuning in from London, Ontario. Did you know that Anthony Richardson is the youngest quarterback in the NFL to score 2 rushing touchdowns in a single game? I did not know that. Thank you, though. He's a beast and so fun to watch. Yes, unfortunately, I don't think he's playing this week, but he has had a great start to his NFL career. Daniel's in the chat. What's up, Daniel Jones? How you doing, man? And Big Al's got Burrow does not play Rams, and if Burrow does play, Bengals win. All right, I like it. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. It's Mitch. We will see you soon. Over-unders tomorrow live. Peace.